Good afternoon, folks. My Caitlin Clark hat. It's my favorite Caitlin Clark hat. So let's talk a little bit, okay? Now, I would certainly love it if the Indiana Fever could win every game, all right? But realistically speaking, I was like that when I was watching the Celtics, but that isn't going to happen, okay? It isn't going to happen because people are gunning for the Indiana Fever. But a couple things I wanted to talk about, all right? And it was funny because I spent a good deal of the time yelling at the television set last night uh, with some of the fouls that they were calling on Caitlin Clark. Okay. And I like to try to temper myself because I am a very, very big Caitlin Clark fan. And, I love the girl. I think you know, I think she's totally the most complete player in the WNBA. Okay. Now, do I think she's the greatest defensive player in the WNBA? I don't. But when I watch the way they grab her and, because that's the only way really to stop her, okay, is to body her and grab her. And then when I watch the stupid fouls they call on her when she's, got her arms up and she's doing nothing, it sets me off. All right. So I wasn't going to even talk about this, except for the fact that I tuned in to another video channel and he was Robin Lundgren. I watch him. I don't watch him every single day, but I watch him enough. And he was saying the exact same thing. So I'm kind of emboldened now. Okay. So the first foul that really made me mad was the foul at the end of the second quarter before the halftime break, which was her third foul of the night. Okay. And, I hadn't even been thinking so much about Stephanie White's failure to challenge any of these fouls until Robin Lundgren mentioned them. I was mad that they called the fouls, but he mentioned a couple of things here that I totally agree with. And like I said, I am not adverse to criticizing Stephanie White. I just don't want to go off on the conspiracy theory train where she's got some kind of ulterior motive. I think like every other coach, she makes mistakes and she's got some good ideas and she's got some things I don't agree with. Okay. And we know that. I said that in my last video. Okay. But that end of the Q2 foul to me was a non-foul. All right. And then she got her fifth foul later in the game. And to me, it looked like her third foul, which was a non-foul, right? Where I just said the end of the Q2 was her third foul. And her fifth foul to me looked like the same kind of shit. All right. And it shouldn't have been called. All right. And I know she's frustrated and the way she reacts with the refs kind of pisses people off, but you know what? She's frustrated and she's got a right to be, and she's an emotional person. All right. She plays with great emotion, and that's just the way it is. Okay. I don't really care. All right. But Robin Lundgren mentioned something else that I hadn't even thought about, is that Stephanie White did not challenge either of these fouls. And I don't understand that. You know what? Now that he's mentioned it, I don't understand it myself. I wasn't actually thinking that when I was watching the game. I was more like annoyed that they were even calling those fouls. And so I hadn't even thought about the fact that Stephanie White wasn't challenging those fouls. And then, okay, later in the game, that stupid foul on Sophie Cunningham, where both she and the player that was next to her, I can't remember if it was Jordan Canada. I don't really remember who it was. both hit the deck. But you know what? Stephanie White certainly challenged that call. And you know what? That was at a point in the game when it wasn't critical to challenge that, right? But in my mind, Caitlin Clark being in foul trouble on 2 bogus fouls, your star player, Robin Lundgren, is right. They need to stand up. She needs to stand up for Caitlin Clark, okay? And quite frankly, I love Sophie Cunningham. I think she's a great 3-point shooter when she gets a clean look at the basket. Caitlin Clark never gets a clean look at the basket. She's always got somebody's hand in her face. But when she gets a clean look at the basket, Caitlin Clark's a great shooter too. But I agree. But I think that, you know, the fact that she challenged the Sophie Cunningham foul meant that she didn't have a challenge left when it came to Caitlin Clark's number 5 foul, okay? And that certainly took her out of the game. And I think he's right. You need to defend your star player. And there's no question that of everybody on this team, I don't care, Kelsey Mitchell notwithstanding, Aaliyah Boston notwithstanding, Caitlin Clark is their star player. She's the most complete player on the floor. This last night, 26 points, 26 hard-fought points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, okay? This is her 4th consecutive game with 20 points or better, all right? So, you know, last week, player of the week. For the week, she averaged 25.3 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, 6.7 assists, okay? So there is no question who the star is on the Indiana Fever, period, end of story, all right? Now, what else did we see last night? All right, we saw not a very good defensive game for the Indiana Fever and not taking care of the ball very well, okay? We saw that, you know. But, you know, the other thing we saw was we saw them fight their way back and tie that game. But by then, you know what? They didn't have any gas left in the tank. And I've seen that before. That happens in professional sports, and it happens in professional basketball all the time, even on the men's side. I used to watch the Celtics do stuff like that, okay? And, you know, to the people who say to me, is that all you have is the Celtics? Yes, that is all I have is the Celtics because, quite frankly, just like I don't watch every WNBA game, I'm an Indiana Fever fan. I wish I had the time to sit and watch every WNBA game. I simply don't. I work. I have other things that I need to tend to. I didn't watch every other NBA game when I was a Celtics fan. I'm a Celtics fan. End of story. I don't know what the hell, you know, why that's so difficult for some people to grasp, okay? I do follow the league. I follow the players. I know what their stats are. I pay attention. And, you know, I'm going to just say this, all right? Caitlin Clark is not a defensive dynamo, but she wasn't expected to be a defensive dynamo. She was expected to be not a liability. These fouls that she's getting called for, and it isn't just last night, it's a couple of games ago, the same situation. These are cheap-ass fouls, okay? And Stephanie White needs to start defending her star player because to have Caitlin Clark off the floor, look at, let's talk about this. She played last night, okay? I believe she played 35 minutes in last night's game, all right? And, you know, the night that she got the 21 points, 14 assists, and 5 rebounds, she played 32 minutes of that game. So the other thing I would like to mention is this fawning over the fact that Jordan Canada had 2 steals last night. I think Jordan Canada is an excellent defensive player, okay? But Jordan Canada is not averaging 25 points a game. She's not scoring 25 points a night. She hasn't had 4 consecutive games of 20 points. Jordan Canada is not taking the ball up the court and getting bodied. Caitlin Clark has the ball in her hands the majority of the game. There are some times when she is playing off ball, but I think we can all agree that when Caitlin Clark is out there as the point guard, she's got the ball in her hands the majority of the time, okay? And she is getting bodied for 94 feet. And it's tiring. At one point last night, she looked absolutely exhausted walking off the court, okay? And she fights for every single point she gets, all right? If she's not hitting from the outside because she can't get a clean look at the basket, then she's taking the ball into the paint and she's getting hammered in there, all right? That's the game, all right? That's the way they try to stop her because there is no other way to stop her, okay? But fawning over this and showing those same two steals over and over and over again. Okay, let me just mention something here, okay? Caitlin Clark has had multiple games this year where she has steals and blocks. Okay, I'm going to mention just a few of them, all right? June 16th, the night she scored 21 points, had 14 assists and 5 rebounds. She also had 1 steal and 1 block. May 22nd, the night she had 22 points and 9 assists. She had 1 steal and 1 block. And the May 13th game, when she had 24 points and 9 assists, she had 2 steals and 1 block. So Caitlin Clark is certainly capable of playing defense. And I am so tired, honestly, of people's commentary on this. She was told by the Indiana Fever she did not need to be an elite defensive player, okay? She was told she just couldn't be a liability on the floor. They didn't get Caitlin Clark in the draft because she was a defensive dynamo. They got her because she's a potent offensive weapon who also happens to dole out assists and make everybody around her better. The fact that some of these people are not finishing things off at the hoop, that's not on Caitlin Clark, okay? We need more. Honestly, we need more from some players, okay? We need more from some players, all right? And, you know, I just, you know, I don't know what it is that people are expecting here, okay? We're arguing now over whether or not she's really an MVP candidate. Well, what are we even talking about that for? All right, we're a quarter of the way into the season. We haven't even hit the All-Star break yet. All right, why are we discussing her versus A'ja Wilson? Because they want A'ja Wilson to win another MVP. That's why, okay? And you know what? Caitlin Clark has played in the WNBA so far 1 full season, 13 games in her second year. She was injured, okay, for most of the season. And right here, right, she's at game number 60-something. That's it, okay? This is like, we're talking about MVP, right? She's not even thinking about being the MVP. That's not what concerns her. What concerns her is the Indiana Fever winning, all right? And, you know, I'm watching some players who are certainly not bringing to the table what she's bringing to the table, okay? Who don't play any better defense than she does on the Indiana Fever, all right? The best defensive player on the Indiana Fever is Lexi Hull, hands down, and she's not expected to score a ton of points. She never has scored a ton of points, all right? Last night, it took until the second half for Kelsey Mitchell to become a factor offensively, all right? She was a non-factor in the first half of the game. All right. And Kelsey Mitchell, by the way, is not a great defensive player either. Okay. She is a scoring guard, a shooting guard. She's not a great defensive player, and she never has been. All right. But no one mentions that. They just mentioned Caitlin Clark. Okay. Caitlin Clark is fully capable of dominating the floor defensively if we want to exhaust her. Okay. And have nothing left in the tank for her to run the floor with, okay? That's my take on this whole thing. All right, Jordan Canada is a great defensive player. Jordan Canada is averaging 10.6 points per game in 30 minutes of play, okay? Yes, she's averaging 2.8 steals a game, but she's only averaging 10.6 points a game offensively, okay? And I like Jordan Canada. I've got nothing bad to say about her. All right. And also, let me just make this comment about our friend there on the Atlanta Dream. You know who I'm talking about. All right. The person who's accused of getting me bounds. All right. Angel Reese. I don't want to hear that Angel Reese can't play basketball because she can. Okay. And I don't think Caitlin Clark would ever make that statement, quite frankly. All right. So let's just get that on the table and then off the table. All right. All right. She can play basketball. All right. She may not be elegant, but she is a hell of a rebounder. Okay. And she can play basketball. And you know what? She's not just rebounding her own missed shots. Okay. That's kind of like not a fair statement either. All right. But there was a scene last night where, because Caitlin Clark wore her new Caitlin ones. Okay. And there was a scene last night where, Angel Reese looked at her own sneakers and did it sarcastically. Okay. And you know what? If Caitlin Clark had ever done that, there'd be all kinds of allegations and nastiness out there on the court had she ever done that kind of thing. But you know what? Big woo, okay? Caitlin Clark doesn't need to get all caught up in that kind of bullshit, all right? Now, who do we need more from? Okay, let's get a couple of people out of the way because I saw some people in comments in videos today dumping on I'm having a name problem today. I'm exhausted, by the way. I digress, but they are beginning the demolition of my store for the revamping and the redesign. And, I wasn't even supposed to be in work today, but I had to go in. But they're dumping on the rookies. And you know what? They're rookies. They're going to make mistakes, okay? So we're watching Raven make mistakes in the paint, okay? Throwing the ball away, getting sloppy with the ball. She's a rookie. She's going to make mistakes, okay? People dumping on Michaela Timpson. She doesn't know what she's doing, blah, 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 blah. You know what? Michaela Timpson is a second-year player, all right? It takes time for people who aren't coming out of college like Caitlin Clark as the number one pick to acclimate themselves to the game. Let's remember that Michaela Timpson was taken in the second round. And let's remember that Raven Johnson was a number 10 pick, not a number 1 pick, not a number 2 pick, a number 10 pick. Okay. So let's give the young people a break. Okay. That's all I'm saying. We don't need to get nasty about stuff. All right. They are going to make mistakes out there. And when you have a game where Caitlin Clark ends up with 5 fouls, you're going to have to see Raven Johnson on the floor. You did see Ty Harris out there. She played pretty good last night. But she's not Caitlin Clark. So we had a loss. All right. We don't need to jump off the bandwagon because the Indiana Fever are not going to win every game this year. They're just not going to. Okay. And traditionally, they're a better second half team than they are a first half team. Okay. So let's just all relax. All right. Like I said, it doesn't matter where you start. It matters where you finish. And the Indiana Fever continue to improve. All right. They won 4 straight. Okay. I get it. I would love to have them have won last night's game. That's great. But I'd like to have them win all 44 games, but that's just totally unrealistic. All right. And they know where they fell apart. They know what they have to do better. When they actually caught up, they were doing everything right. But by that time, you give a team like Atlanta any smell of blood in the water, and they're not about to let something like that go. So the Indiana Fever need to take care of the ball better. All right. We need to see some stuff. We need to see more stuff out of some players, okay? You know, I love everybody that's on the Fever, but some people who are missing these shots at the rim, they got to finish. They got to finish, okay? Aaliyah Boston is fantastic. I love her, okay? She can't be expected to do it all right? Caitlin Clark can't be expected to do it all. I know they are both all-stars. I know they are both number one picks, but they can't be expected to do it all, and the big three cannot be expected to carry that team, okay? They are going to need the other players to step it up, okay? Now, I'm not going to dump on Sophie Cunningham because up until last night, Sophie Cunningham has been fantastic. But Sophie Cunningham wasn't getting any clean looks at the basket either. The Atlanta Dream played a great defensive game. And when you play great defense, right, it leads to great offense. And that's actually what happened last night. And I've been saying that all along. So that's where I am. I'm kind of tired of the cheap calls on Caitlin Clark. I was pretty mad. And again, it was clear that she dropped 26 points last night, and it was clear that she was literally trying to push herself as hard as she could to win this game. You know, yeah, she missed some free throws. I personally think Caitlin Clark was tired last night. I think that she was exhausted, and, you know, it looked like she was to me. But you know what? She was also extremely frustrated, and that showed. I think it showed. So, yeah, I think she needs to temper herself with her reaction to the refs because I don't think it works in her favor. But by the same token, I actually do understand her frustration with the way the game is being called. Okay. But the rest of the players, they're going to need to step it up. They are going to need to step it up. Okay. We need Misha Hines-Allen in there. You know, again, I've seen her throw a couple of really good passes, but by and large, she's not a great passer. Aaliyah Boston's a great passer for a big. Okay, she absolutely is. So I have no problem with her. She does not make me nervous when she passes the ball. Misha Hines-Allen makes me very nervous. Mo Billings, we need more out of Mo Billings. She's averaging 5.6 points a game. We need more output from Mo Billings. Absolutely need it. And she's one of the players who's not finishing things at the rim. Okay, there's been a lot of missed bunnies up there, and I would like to see her finish those plays off. Okay, that's, to me, that's concentration. On the other end, on the rebounding end, she's pretty darn good. Okay, and so I got no complaints with that. She's a fierce rebounder, but we need to see some more offensive output from Mo Billings. We really do. And I personally think Lexi Hull needs to start every game. I do. She is the defensive juggernaut, and we need her out there. So that's what I got tonight. Tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow we play the Atlanta Dream at 1 o'clock in Atlanta. That's going to be a tough one. That is going to be a tough one, especially after they beat us in Indiana. But the Indiana Fever can win tomorrow's game. And we're going to need to see that. We want to see that tomorrow. So unfortunately, I am working tomorrow, mostly because I don't have a choice. But if I could be at home in front of the TV screen, I would. But the good news is that it's on Fubo and I can record it. And the really good news is we have the big TV in our office now, and I believe that I will be able to stream that game while I'm in the office. And you can bet your life I'm going to be doing that. So you guys have a great night. Keep the faith, folks, okay? You know, I see people out there say, "No, this is a 500 team that's going nowhere." You know what? We're 8-6, okay? We're 8-6. Let's remember where the Knicks were when they went to the championship, right? Okay? I've seen the Celtics win a championship not having the biggest ratio of win to loss, tallies on the planet. So let's all relax. The Fever are a better second half team than first half team. Okay. They are putting it all together. They are getting there. They will figure it out. But Stephanie White needs to start defending her star player and challenging some of these cheap ass calls, because the fact that she has to be off the floor is not a good thing. It's just not a good thing. And had she not gotten that third foul at the end of the second quarter, things could have been very different. But she got that call. It was not a good call. And maybe it wouldn't have been overturned, but you know what? Other players, other coaches don't have a problem exercising those things. And it needed to be done, because it also shows the refs that they're not going to allow that to happen. Okay? So that's what I got. You guys have a great night, and I will see you tomorrow. I will see you tomorrow night, because I'm not working on Sunday. Definitely not in on Sunday. I'll talk to you all later.